Hey, how's it going, guys? My name is Jackie Fish and welcome back to the channel and welcome back to some exclusive footage from Total War Pharaohs, the next installment in the historical side of the Total War games. In this video, we'll be taking a look at 3 battles that I got to play thanks to CA and basically kind of just deep diving into what battles are going to be like in this game. One, this is being touted as the next historical game, so hopefully we'll see a return to form of the historical games, as the last true historical game we got was Total War Attila, and that was like 9 years ago, so it's been a while. And we'll be able to make a pretty good decision whether or not this game is going to be worth the £50 that they are charging for it. So as I said, this is being touted as the next historical game. They've got rid of the Saga title, and of course, if they're expecting people to shell out the same price as Total War Warhammer 3, then hopefully we'll have enough in the battles side of things to actually make that worth it. Now, do keep in mind we have not seen any campaign footage, and I imagine they've probably gone pretty hard on the campaign side of things to keep people engaged. But of course, until they go ahead and show that off, we'll have to, just kind of look forward to it, I guess. So let's first off start off with the really positive things in the game, and I guess actually give a good comparison, because again, you guys don't want to be here for 20 minutes or however long I'm going to be speaking of. The game plays very much like Troy. The combat still feels quite floaty. There's no real hard impacting. Like when I'm playing Medieval 2, I guess the game is so old, so it does feel kind of clunky, but you have that kind of weight to it. When I'm playing Total War Attila, when I'm moving heavy infantry, they kind of feel like heavy infantry. And of course, you're not going to have really heavily armored people around this period unless you're playing like Mycenaeans or something like them. But again, the combat, just feels kind of like Troy in that sense, but they have made improvements to it. So I don't want to completely write it off because it is much better than the Troy combat. Again, there are no specific hero units anymore, so we do have hero bodyguards, but I did have plenty of times when I was fighting where units would just kind of really randomly run off into different directions, and there was no weight to them staying in formation a lot of the time. They would just kind of float around and get caught on other units they shouldn't be, and I think that really reminded me of Total War Troy when I remember playing that game. I feel like that happened a lot. So yeah, I think my overall opinion on that is that the gameplay and the battles definitely do remind me of Troy, but with improvements and without heroes. So as much as I would like to see, them go way further back and bring in the gameplay, kind of to be a little bit less arcadey, of which it is in Total War Troy and in Total War Pharaohs, kind of gone for a much more of a safer approach, and they've gone for more of a middle ground between the two. However, a very positive thing that we are seeing in the game is a complete improvement to the formation system. Units can now go ahead and pick from several different types of formations depending on their makeup, whether or not they're shock infantry, whether they're heavy infantry, light infantry, etc. They're now going to actually have formations that will actually interact with the way they fight, instead of just giving these stat benefits that we've been kind of receiving in previous Total Wars. They will now actually functionally affect the combat. For example, if I've got a unit of heavy infantry, I could set them to actually fall back and they will fight a fighting retreat, which is so cool. That's something that we've been asking for years and years in Total War. So you can actually set up these, these Cannae style battles where your center is crumbling, but you're crushing on the flanks. You can do the exact same as well with certain shock infantry, where they can actually be really aggressive and they'll push even further into the enemy, almost pushing them back themselves. You can also set your infantry to hold now, so you can kind of fight this, this fighting advance or this fighting retreat on your units, and it plays actually pretty well. I did, again, to go back to my previous point about the floaty combat, this did seem to kind of affect that a little bit better when my units did have that formation, say they were holding or being aggressive. It would kind of keep them more in a united front, I guess, and I really kind of realized that I didn't have them issues. Major improvement they are toting for the game as well is a new dynamic weather system, so you're going to be receiving stuff like heavy rain and sandstorms that will dramatically affect the actual gameplay itself. In sandstorms, range and missile damage is severely reduced. When the rain hits certain areas, the map will be entrenched in mud, as the battle goes on, which will of course bog down heavy infantry and kind of transform the battlefield field as you're playing. And these were really just the only 2 examples they gave us in the battle preview, but I will assume that there is going to be more, maybe with stuff like flooding and other mechanics which would maybe make parts of a map immovable, and then as the battle goes on maybe it dries out. I think there's a drought as well. Actually, yeah, so there were 3. There was the sandstorm, there was a drought, and then there was heavy rain turning certain parts of the map to mud, and then in the drought there it then kind of transforms that into passable terrain. And it would be really cool to go ahead and have that actually improved again, like to actually have like kind of the sea level rising and kind of creating new paths for you to move. Another really positive thing is that they have also gone back to actually adding in more of the locked animations when people are fighting. So a lot more now you'll see units actually kind of colliding into melee combat, shields being hit to side, swords kind of clashing, and actually getting more of that realistic style of battle that we know and love. I would say it's much more than Total War 3 Kingdoms, but not as much as like a game like Total War Attila, where most of the animations were set up like that. It's still a step in the right direction, but I would still love to see more and more. There are a lot of floaty hits coming in, and again, still definitely not enough of these key animations to make the battles feel realistic, but still a positive nonetheless. Unit diversity also felt fine. I had no complaints from the type of units we were given. We were given a whole range of light infantry, which again felt much more fast moving. The heavy infantry was slower and could hold the line a little bit more. You know, we had shock infantry, we had chariots, we had javelins. I also noticed that we didn't get a button when one of your units has throwable weapons, but they're like a base melee unit. You couldn't kind of tell them to launch their missiles. Don't really know what was up with that. I think that's been in the game since Rome 2, so seemingly they removed it, or maybe it was removed from Troy. I mean, unfortunately, they haven't patched it back in, but yeah, it was pretty frustrating. You'd have to get the unit in position, stop them still, and then they would kind of take a second and then decide, oh yeah, actually we should throw because we have ammunition. I don't know why we just can't press Alt and then click on the enemy like we could in the olden games. As we're on a bit of run with all the positive stuff as well, kind of, I guess, put all the positive stuff here. You know, I did kind of complain at the beginning, but yeah, I'll put all the positive stuff here so you guys can check that out and then check out the negative stuff in a second. So another thing that I actually really enjoyed were the sieges in this game. It was a ton of fun playing them. We played on an absolutely gigantic map, which was awesome. The scale of it was really good. Having to move soldiers around this siege to kind of help counter defense was absolutely awesome. I did see a few kind of creators kind of be like, oh, it's way too big, you know, it's awful, we're never gonna enjoy it. And I think that was a lot of the Warhammer fan creators saying stuff like that. Personally, I think it's awesome. I think it's great that you have this massive opportunity to attack from certain directions. Of course, you're not going to utilize the entire map. Also, I think we were only using about 20 to 25 units in the battle, so you couldn't really expand out. But yeah, the way the sieges, how I love sieges and how I love sieges in historical games is that they were there so you could actually decide where you want to attack, but it was there so you could like choose a wall or two, and that's where you're going. You never use the entire map in previous iterations of the series, but you could still just kind of choose a lane and attack, and I think it was really good. I actually really enjoyed the siege maps, and hopefully we get plenty more of these these large scale engagements. Again, I think it would be awesome for like 4v4s and stuff, which really have dwindled in the past years. Yeah, so overall, positive wise, I think the new iterations of the formation system is great. That's a really good addition to the game. I think the weather is cool. You know, it's a bit gimmicky. You know, how often is it going to pour down with rain and transform the battle map, or a massive sandstorm? You know, how much is that actually going to change? I don't know, but it's still a cool feature nonetheless. Sieges look great as well. I'm definitely happy with them, and I actually never thought sieges were a problem in Troy either. Now let's move on to my negatives from the gameplay. So yeah, I mean, the biggest one, I've already mentioned it. The game is basically playing like Troy. You could sit me down and tell me this is a mod for Troy, and I would probably believe it, which again is hard to say when we haven't seen gameplay footage of the actual campaign. But when you're charging, you know, $60, $70 and £50, you kind of wanted to see a bit of a bigger improvement to the actual combat system itself. So I think if you hated how Troy played, this is better in the battles, but it's still not like a leaps and bounds on from that. You will feel like you are just playing an improved version of Troy. The battle maps themselves, I think, have come such a long way with their design, but they are just far too small for my liking. It basically gives you one option to attack. many times in previous iterations of Total War, before Warhammer, you would have this much large scale map, and you'd have like, there'd be like hills in certain places, there'd be forests in certain places, and you would really decide on where you utilize, where you want to attack from, what position you're going to go at the enemy, where you're going to hide your cavalry and stuff. And I've really noticed in the more recent iterations of Total War, and I think Total War Pharaohs does this pretty heavily, is that you have one option. The maps are so small that you basically are where you're fighting, you go forward, and then you try and outflank here and there. There might be one kind of fancy terrain system where it kind of choke points you a bit, or maybe there is like some trees off to the right. But besides that, that's it. And I feel like that heavily reduces the amount of tactics and strategy you can actually do in a battle, because it's so obvious what's happening here. It's so obvious that the player has their cavalry hidden or some troops hidden in that forest, because it's the only forest. It's so obvious that the enemy forces are just laid out in front of you, because you are just going forward and engaging. The maps just don't really encourage high level strategy. They encourage you to charge at the enemy and just like out micro your opponents to win a battle, rather than having this more underlaying effect. And it was the same for Total War Troy as well. The maps were gorgeously developed, and they had some really amazing campaign features, and some really battle features of like rocky mountains and impassable terrain and stuff. But again, it's just far too small. I would love these maps to be about double the size, and I think it would be, really awesome. Maybe they can't do that. Maybe they can't put the same level of detail in a larger map, and that's just game development right there. But also, you're charging me £50, so I'm going to keep on coming back to that. If you're going to charge me full price for a game, I'd expect to see some large-scale stuff in there to make that worth it. Another thing that actually made me want to, break down and cry a little when I was playing these siege battles, and it's the same for land battles as well, honestly, is the way that units retreat. I don't know how we've all just come accustomed to this. I remember actually Alt F4ing when I was playing Total War Troy. But when units retreat, they just scatter into a random position a lot of the time through my own units, which you can maybe make a good kind of argument for maybe in a land battle. It's a mass rout. My units are running. They just want to get out of there. Maybe running towards the heavily armored infantry after you've dropped your weapons and you're running away isn't the best idea, but hey, maybe you do it. But siege battles, oh my lord. I had maybe about 4 situations when playing the siege battles where I would be fighting a unit on the walls, or I'd be fighting a unit, in the city streets, and they would rout. They would then come back from routing behind my lines and then just go and capture a victory point. I mean, how is that okay game design right there, where units can lose but then just come back, and then the AI is like, cool, I'm back here now, let's go capture a victory point. That was a problem in Total War Troy. I remember countless times engaging the enemy maybe outside my settlement or just away from the victory points. They would rout through me and then just go capture a victory point. I remember actually losing a battle like that, which is just not a fun way to lose a battle. And they'd come back with like 20 men. So just make it so that maybe they have to go back to a certain point to regain their control. The game, again, has a lot of units will rout, come back. I hate that style of gameplay. I don't want to feel like I'm playing a historical battle where, units will just come back if you give them 10 seconds. But yeah, mainly just the fact that they can just route through me and then get a benefit through me winning the engagement. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. And it's just, some real underlying issue, I guess, with their AI in these games. Oh yeah, and something I did forget to mention as well, on the positive side of things, it does seem like we have got a return to commander abilities as well. So certain commanders will be able to pop up buffs and rally soldiers, which I think was lacking from Total War 3 Kingdoms. So again, it's good to see that that has made a return. So yeah, overall, the positives for me are the new battle formation mechanic. That's something we've been asking for, and it looks really good. The new dynamic weather is awesome. The unit variety seems fine to me. No problems there whatsoever, especially with the 3 different cultures. I'm sure they'll be coming with their own different takes on all the different unit classes. And of course, the siege maps look great. I really hope there are plenty more of them style of siege maps actually in the game. And then my negatives are that the gameplay does feel very Troy-esque, just an improved version of Troy. Units kind of felt very floaty. There isn't much like collision in the mod. The battle maps are just far too small for my liking. I would, as I said in the video, like for 2 times the size of the actual battle map. And the godforsaken routing through my units just grinds my gears to no end, but I will not go on about it. So yeah, overall, I think if you hated the Troy gameplay, this is an improvement on it, but I don't think it's going to be enough to really sell you and bring you over to the other side. And if you enjoyed it, then yeah, I think this is just an improvement on top of that. I think for me, as we are right now, for me to actually recommend this game, we're going to have to see some pretty large scale improvements to the campaign and the campaign map from Total War Troy to make me say, yeah, this is worth the £50 or whatever. Yeah, as of right now, if I had to give a random arbitrary number to tell you what I think of these battles, they're probably like a 5 out of 10. I don't hate them. I think they're way better than Troy, but definitely nowhere near up there whatsoever for me for historical. So yeah, let's look forward to the campaign and we'll see what happens there. But yeah, let me know what you guys thought of the gameplay down below in the description. Has this sold it for you? Have you like really seen the improvements and been like, yeah, that's awesome, I definitely want to pick this up now? Or are you like me, waiting for more campaign gameplay stuff? Or has this sealed your fate and been like, nah, yeah, this game isn't for me, I'm gonna wait for the next big historical Total War, which is probably slated for next year? Let me know and I'll see you guys in the next one.